Well, my first challenge was getting a sphere, so that's what this was all about, was learning the process I got together to make more than one exactly the same size, for me to show my process for making these little mood owls. First off was how to make a perfect sphere. That wasn't as big a challenge. You can do it many ways. Making the heads the same size, that was the challenge. I started there saying, there's the owl, there's what the project's going to be. And then I first started making a bunch of blocks. I had a bunch of flooring pieces, so I laminated it together, and I basically got a 2-inch piece of wood in the center there once I get rid of the tongues and grooves. So I turned them tongue and groove. This was my first attempt at it. I turned them to a cylinder and put a tenon on one end, because one of the ways of doing it was to mount it in a chuck and then do the, what do they call that, you measure it off, octagon method, and so that worked. I mean, it was okay, I could make one. And then you put a center line on and do all the math and do the turning, and I ended up with the ball. The biggest challenge is when I went to do the second one, it didn't come out to be the same size. So what we're going to show you today is how I ended up making them the same size. So anyway, once you have a ball, you put it between cup chucks, and you turn the points off, and you end up with a perfect circle ball. It's a little bit of work, and it's a lot of fun. And that's it, using a chuck. Well, I switched, and I went to using between centers. I'll show you that here in a little bit. And this is just my shop notes. So the shop notes, that's page 1, and that's page 2, that's page 3, and that's page 4. I usually start with a blank. This is, you've seen the one picture of some floorboards that were laminated, and if I drew a circle in here, it would be about a roughly 2-inch circle, and it's about 3 inches long. And so I cut all of these blanks you see here, all 3 inches long, and it makes it really easy to make a whole series of spheres. I've graduated to using what the shadow technique for turning the spheres, and I'll turn my light on here, and we'll switch to this camera. I don't know, can you guys see that shadow in there? Okay, and you can see that the if I back this off, you should be able to see this here I just put a pencil line on here so that I have some way of telling me when this pencil line is lined up at the center line of the lathe. And so I lock that down so that now that the platform and that center line is basically lined up at the center of the lathe. Then I put a workpiece in. Get this on the center. Put this one on center. Then when you turn this, you'll notice that the center line is going through the square. But we need to make a cylinder. So what I normally do now is I get rid of my little platform there, and I'll set my tool rest on. One of the critical things here is you got to make sure you're not interfering with the wood, of course, but then you also don't want the tool rest to go and push on the shadow platform.
Bert, so you need to recenter your paper there. It after you move the light and then put it back on, you lost your center on your center line.
Oh, okay. Good point. That would have. Yes, that would have made it a little bit unnerving when yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that, but yeah, you can realign everything. The beauty of it is you can recover. That comes in really important when we go to the second stage. So the first stage is getting this set up, and right now obviously there's no circle on there, so you can't really see that it's going to be a circle. But there, now we're free and clear of the tool rest, and it's giving us a good shadow. So the trick now is face shield on. We'll turn it to a cylinder. So I'm just going to turn this around just to get rid of the tongue and groove. Basically, we've got a cylinder. It's not quite as small as I'd like to have because I still got one little groove there. So I'll get rid of that groove. Okay, so we've got we've got a cylinder there now. We've basically got a cylinder there now, and you can see that you can hardly see the paper because of all of the sawdust. So I rigged up an air hose on here, and I've got a little valve here, so I can just be blowing some air onto the paper. It gets rid of the sawdust. I don't know if you can hear my compressor in the background. It'll shut off in a minute. But what we end up doing now is I take a pencil, and I put a mark where that cylinder is, and that cylinder, and there, and there. Then I can take this paper off. Now this is all the setup to do it for the first time. Once this is done, you can make a whole bunch of these exactly the same size. Which is the best one for there? So what I do now is I just take a ruler, and I line it up with these pencil marks that were made from the shadow. Okay, so that gives me the outline of the cylinder, and that's a cylinder that's the size that all the owls are going to be. So then I take a little compass, and I adjust it so that it'll let me make a circle that just fits inside these marks. Okay. So now I can take this circle on here, put it back on the shadow platform. Slow this air down a little bit. Of course, and right now you can see that the little circle doesn't completely line up with the cylinder. But once the circle's on there, you can move this platform back and forth until the circle is inside the shadow.
That's right.
Right? So I didn't have to measure anything. Everything was just done by, turn it till it's round, put a pencil mark, use a ruler for a straight edge, and then you can always readjust when you go back on the lathe. Now it's a simple matter of deciding where the center is going to be, which isn't critical, and you just turn away to the circle. And I use either a bowl gouge, a spindle gouge, sometimes a skew. If I'm really, really adventurous, I'll use a skew, but for this time, I'll just use a spindle gouge. And I'm looking down in between the tool rest and the wood. And I can see there's a bit of a flaw here that may or may not add to the owl, but we'll take a look and see what it looks like. So can you guys see the shadow disappearing?
Yep.
Now the trick here is just to sneak up on it so that you're only taking the wood that doesn't want to be there. Now sometimes people will stop at this point and leave this little bit proud, but I found that if I take this down really, really small, it really helps the next step.
because you can see a little bit of the point sticking out of the circle. Well, if you take that right down until that's even about twice as much as I would normally leave, but I leave that much until I have this side turned down. And I try and do practice cuts to follow the arc so that once I'm getting close to the circle, I've already got my movement down so that I'm actually following the circle and sneaking up on it. Yeah, that's getting getting nice and small, but I'm going to take that down some more. But before I take this side down, because it's the drive side, I'm going to take this back side down a little bit more. So that's about not even an eighth of an inch left there. So that's one ball. And now the real beauty of this process is that to do the next one,
You don't have to change anything on the platform, and hopefully I won't have to change anything on the tool rest. But even if I have to move the tool rest a little bit to clear the wood, which I will have to do, it's not a big deal. When I get to doing a bunch of these, I set it up like this, and then I don't move the tool rest for the next 8 or 10. If I was going to make a dozen of these, I wouldn't have to change anything now. Just keep putting blocks of wood on, turning them down to the circle.
So you can probably see that I got right close to the circle, and now I'm just going to take the wood away. So if you ride the bevel, once you're getting right on the circle, you ride the bevel, you have total control of the cut. So you can see that I'm trying to follow the arc of the pencil mark, even though I'm a long ways away from it. But that's just letting me practice my muscle memory for my body to move, because I don't use my arms, I'm using my whole body, which gives you so much more control.
And for this demonstration, I wanted to show that this is how quick and easy it is to get exactly the same size spheres to start with. And because I know all of my blanks are the same square and the same length, I don't have to move anything, and I can turn another one. Well, we've only been at this for 20 minutes, and I've got 3 spheres. And I could go ahead and just keep on making them as many as I wanted to without having to change any of the settings on the lathe, which is so much faster and quicker than switching with a chuck. If you use a chuck on here, you have to do a process where you turn all the cylinders with a tenon, and then you put it in a chuck, and then you turn it, and then you'd end up with a little pip on one side. And that would probably take you 20 minutes just to do one. And here I've made 3 balls in 20 minutes. And if I was here not doing a video, I would probably have a half a dozen of them made by now, because I am trying to take it a little bit easy so that if anybody has questions, by all means. So what I do now is we're going to go to the next step. I could turn more, but I think you guys get the idea how simple this shadow method works. But now when I go to the next step, I take a little saw and I cut these little end pieces off. They're already right level with the circle, so I don't have to worry too much.
Somebody was asking if there's much of a difference between the circumference of the circle on the paper and the ball itself.
Oh, absolutely. And when I first started doing this, I was trying to figure out how to make it so that I could make a ball a certain size by making the little circle the right size. And then I realized that once you set the platform, it doesn't matter. I'll set the ball down on top of it. I don't know if you can see the difference. So can you see the difference in the size of the ball and the size of the circle?
Yeah.
The circle is bigger than the ball. And depending on how high this is, that will be, but I don't care because I'm not measuring anything.
They're all the
I know
same.
they're all the same. And I know that this ball was made out of a piece of wood that the solid wood was 2 inches. So if I did a caliper measurement on here, let's see roughly how big this is. And I'll take a measurement tool here. And so these are about 1 7/8 inches. So I started with a 2-inch flooring. And by the time I got it round, I went down 1/8 of an inch. And then, the way I look at it, it's too bad, so sad. All of these balls are going to be the same size. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's perfect.
But now the fun part is because we're going to have to get rid of those little hips on there. I put my chuck on, and I've already got a cup chuck mounted in my 4-jaw chuck. So that's a cup chuck there. And I use little threaded blocks, and I'll screw this onto my
Make a cup chuck.
my cup chuck with 3/4 10 threads in it. And this little divot in here is designed so that it will drive the ball on the outside surface. Right?
Yep.
Well, now you can notice that the pencil mark's way over here, and the ball that I'm looking at is here. So that's just a simple matter of moving this back. And this is where the beauty of it is that when you're doing a dozen of these, you've already got a dozen rough turned. And I just moved the shadow line. I don't know if you guys can pick it up on the
Yep.
camera there. You can see that there's the big pip sticking out, right? A big pip and a little pip. But if you'll notice, the rest of the ball is still in the perfect circle portion. So now, if you can ride the bevel with a spindle gouge here and just take the pip off, you're done. Both sides will be done. And it's really that simple. I'll see if I can do it. Now that we've got everybody watching, I'll probably screw it up. But so far it works.
You ride the bevel, you pick up the cut. And by riding
the bevel, it keeps you from going in too deep. So there's a bit of a high spot here, and this one's almost gone. So it's just riding the bevel.
ride the bevel, pick up the slight cut. And in this
exercise, 80 grit sandpaper is your friend. You can slow the speed down a little. I don't know if you can see on the circle. It looks like the shadow is pretty much even on the circle.
Yep.
We'll switch it sideways and see if it stays the same. Pretty much the same.
And again, I'm just using 80 grit sandpaper to
Do the dark float?
get rid of the any of the tool marks or a little bit of a a hump and bump or whatever.
What?
I need a cup of tea.
And I know there's folks out there when they say they're turning spheres that they should stop and turn it at 90 degrees and whatever. I just go 3 or 4 times. I don't even stop the lathe a lot of times to turn it, and you end up with a sphere. And again, break these off. Do the second one. And then once this thing is set up, you'll notice that on the paper it's lined up already, so I don't have to do hardly anything. And I can, if I had a dozen of these ready to go, this is how long it takes to get rid of the pips. You ride the bevel, pick up the cut, ride the bevel, pick up a little cut. Then I come in from the other side and ride the bevel and pick up a cut. And that's good enough for sandpaper. Now we can sand it. Now what I do is I take a pencil and I figure out where I think center should be, and I put a pencil mark about 1/3 of the way around. So that's going to be where the overlap is, and there's going to be an eyeball here and an eyeball here. So can you see the pencil mark on there? I'll try and do this from this side. I normally do it straight up and down, and I'll set the point. I won't put I don't drive the point in. I just set it in and say, oh, this is way too big because this thing is set for the maximum diameter of the eye. So I'm just going to close the eye up a little bit and say, I want the eyeball to be, say, an inch and a quarter. So, or a little better than an inch. So I'm going to set it for, I set my caliper, and that measurement's not critical. You set the compass on here and put a pencil mark on that center line. Now you can see the center line. Now those are going to be the centers of your eye. And so I take an awl, like a 3-cornered awl, and I put it right on the line and the center mark. And I'll do the same on this side. And again, the position of these punch marks on the line, if they're off by a 1/16 or whatever, is not really critical because you're going to use that as the center and turn it away. But without changing the diameter of this compass, you put it in your punch mark and you draw a circle. Draw a circle on there. And you do the same on this one. You put the compass in the little divot and you turn a circle. Okay. So now that's what it should look like. And I would go ahead and do that with all 3 of these. Okay, so that's basically it for that stage. And we're going to move to the next stage. So we don't need the shadow line anymore. So this shadow platform is a pretty basic construction. It's just made out of wood. I started with a piece of wood here, put a cross piece on, and this is just small enough to go in between this lathe ways and my small lathe ways, and is big enough so it'll grab the bottom. So that latches in place. Then I put a spacer in here that allows this here to clear the tool rest or the banjo. So that's an adjustment. Then I have an adjustment here where I can move this in and out and I can turn it. So it gives me multi-axis turning. Plus I've got this knob on top
and that gives me the ability to turn this as well as slide it back and forth. So it'll fit on any 24-inch lathe. And on the back side, I've got this knob here, which allows me to change up and down. Don't know if you can see that, but that's where if I wanted to turn a bigger ball, I could put this down lower and everything would be down lower, so I could have a bigger ball on the headstock and it would still be able to use the shadow. And the most time consuming from doing the owls was setting this stuff up. Once it's set up, you can do a dozen 24 owl heads in a matter of very, very short time. Okay, now this is a cup chuck made out of they call this an irrigation fitting, an irrigation coupler. So if you buy one coupler, this looks the same on the other side. You end up with two. You make a piece of wood on the inside, just a little piece of wood with a dish in it. It's like a cup chuck. I put a piece of foam on there, and you can stack these pieces up in and out of this chuck to position the eyeball where it needs to be. When I first started doing it, this was really, really fiddly trying to get all this stuff to line up. So what I found was I used a Morris Taper 2 to Morris Taper 2 extension, and then I put my one-way, oh, look at that, it doesn't fit. Okay, so now this collar has I made an aluminum ring in here, and I machined out the size of the opening so that when I drop a ball in here, when I drop the ball in here, the actual eyeball protrudes. I don't know if you can see that on the light. I could turn this light off now. There, I don't know if you can see that. Now it's protruding out of that hole far enough that I can get a tool in there to take the eye relief. But what I do is now is I just hang this on this extension. It gets it out of the way. I can hold this eyeball in here and line this up with that divot that I put in with the awl. It lines up, and now that ball is lined up perfectly on center with the lathe, and I can tighten this up. Now I can put the coupling on, or coupling cover on, lock the lathe, and now that's held securely. Can you see the pencil marks on there? Okay, if you can see them, then it's a simple matter of taking a spindle gouge. I like to cut a little bit. I like to have my spindle gouge lower and ending up on center, and I keep my spindle gouge into my body so I don't use my arms. I start here and I just move my whole body, so I'm rocking forward, and that gives me a lot better control. And I only cut to the pencil line. And I put a divot in there. And normally I could drill it on the lathe, but what I have found is that that's just another step. And why take the tools in and out? If I'm making a dozen of these, I just turn all of these to this point and put a divot in, and then I just drill the holes by hand with a hand drill. So now this sets out of the way. This comes out of the way real easy. You set the eyeball in here, and you can line up the live center, or the drive. Get it in the center of that divot. Push it in. Now the ball is held nice and secure. I can tighten up the coupling. This coupling cost me about $10 from an irrigation supply store, not online. It was an irrigation supply store. Home Depot doesn't even carry them. Home Hardware carries them, but they're an irrigation fitting. And if you go to an irrigation supply store, they're probably in the neighborhood of, $10 or $15 for, and then you end up with two. So there's the eyeball, second eyeball, and you can see the cut that I made. I don't know if you can see that clearly on there, but you can see the cut of the first eye is just has removed the pencil line a little bit. So that tells me when I remove this pencil line, that'll be the same distance in on the other eye, and that kind of centers them. Nobody's really questioned whether they're perfect or not, and I don't measure them, and I don't measure the depth. I just get used to going in at a bit of an angle, a slight bit of a cove, and after a couple of them, you end up getting a good feel for how deep it should be. I can hear something a little bit different on this particular one. It's vibrating just a little. And so that tells me that I probably don't have this tight enough. There we go. And I can't quite see the pencil mark, so I'm just going to darken it up a little bit so I can see it a little bit better. Normally I've got this light on when I'm doing it, so. So I just put a divot in there so when I want to use the drill, I've got a place for the drill to start. And so that's one owl head with the eyeballs marked, and there's a little bit of a point here. Some people have told me that, hey, I should carve in and put in a beak, and I may do that in the future. However, this is so quick and easy to get to this stage, and everybody that looks at the finished product loves them. They just think they're already looking like an owl. So I figure why put more work into something when you don't have to? And so this is just now rinse and repeat. Like I say now, I would take a hand drill and drill these holes and glue the eyeballs in. I use Tight Bond Quick and Thick to glue the eyeballs in, so the holes I can put in can be a little bit bigger than what the glass eyeballs little shafts are, and the Quick and Thick grabs it really, really nice. The next step then is making a base, making the base body. Oops, I gotta have my life center on here, not my dead center I only use for centering the eyeballs. I need to use my life center for returning the bodies. And when I turn the bodies, I like to turn the bodies with a bit of a taper on here, and I put a little bit of a bead on the bottom so it kind of simulates a foot. And then on the top, I just dish it out, and I'll dish it out. I usually try and match this arc as perfect as I can. And what I found, what really makes a difference is just make sure that the center is deeper than what the ball is, and then it'll seat itself on this little rim. If it's perfectly in line with all of the wood, it tends to want to recenter itself. But if you only have, say, even a quarter of an inch of the radius nicely rounded, then it'll hold the head in just about any configuration you want, and it won't try and pull itself down. And again, I have a process for doing this because there are a couple of steps. First thing is to get it round, and then I have to shape the end or hollow the end. So I use a chuck. So I turn this around, put a tenon on it, and I'll do that to three of them because I got three heads. So I'll round out three of them for bodies. Again, if I'm doing a production run of these, I would have done 8 or 10 or a dozen heads. And then when I'm doing this, I would make 8 or 10 or a dozen bodies. So they're really, really easy to make multiples. And the bodies on these, when I make them, I try and make them a little bit smaller than the head, and then taper the body back so that it simulates a shoulder and then goes down to where the feet would be. And then first off, I'm going to mark off where the bottom's going to be with the parting tool. A little bit of a pip on here, but I take that off with a vertical belt sander, and we have an owl. And for the bases, it's just rinse and repeat. I like to make sure that the owl's shoulders are a little bit smaller than the diameter of the head, and then they taper down to this little feature down here, which simulates their feet, and we call that an owl. And that was basically 3 owls in a little over an hour.